Hello, my name's James Hewison, and I'm a senior lecturer in dance in the Department of English and Creative Arts at Edge Hill University.
Hi, I'm Dorothy. I'm a neuroscientist, a cognitive psychologist, and a reader at the Department of Psychology at Edge Hill University.
And I'm the principal investigator of the Like Yesterday project.
And I'm the co-investigator of the project.
And for us, this project started with a shared interest in memory, and hence the title of the project, Like Yesterday, which is a phrase you might hear now and again or use now and again to describe something that may have happened a long time ago, but somehow it's very deep-rooted in your memory bank. And so it feels very familiar, fresh, alive. It still resonates, it still has an impact, and it's still effective. And so we set out to explore how memory, those sorts of memories, might be utilized to create short pieces of performance. And very specifically, we were interested in memories that involve movement somehow. A sense of moving, physically moving, or movement happening around our participants, or even from an emotional perspective of being moved, a memory in which you sensed that you felt moved by whatever the events were. And we have worked with volunteers to try to find creative responses based in some form of movement. Sometimes it's dance, sometimes it's not, that come directly from those memories. And that's been the journey of the research so far.
I would like to expand on the neuroscience aspect of the project, particularly how it connects to the construction of the memory. So memory is crucial in our everyday lives. When we encode new information, it usually involves multiple senses, creating what we might call like a vivid memory. So the senses usually include like hearing, sight, smell, and touch. For example, you might remember the smell of the seaside or the taste of the fish and chips because of how strongly those sensory details are tied to a specific event. So the aim of the project is to have participants to recall an event, and in neuroscience term we call like an episodic memory, and explore like the reasons like why this memory is we remember this. So we're also interested in how movement can be used as a medium to express and reconstruct, these memories. So this way, we can understand, what happened and why the participant would like to choose like this particular memory.
And for me, from a choreographic point of view, and from a research point of view, and it's there in my teaching, I'm very interested in how we can use personal narrative, stories, storytelling, autobiography, things that have really happened to people, how we can use that as information to generate performance materials, to generate pieces of work. And I think I'm interested in it particularly because of its authenticity, because there's a reality in it. It's not an act in that sense. It's felt, and it's personal, and it's personally understood. And there's a very interesting performance area where vulnerability comes into the performance attitude, and we sense people telling real stories that really happened to them and offering that up. And when you see that on a stage, or hopefully when you see that in film, you are aware of the generosity of that act. There's a generosity in the vulnerability. And this is the journey that we've asked our participants to very bravely go on with us. And we have opened up this space for them to explore and give some value to their lived experiences. That's the other thing we are inviting them to do, to say that these memories that you have, they really are worth exploring and worth being creative with and around.
I think the other element I would like to mention is the genuine reality there because it's genuine, from the participants, and they remember this and express it out. And from like a neuroscientist perspective, it's important, when you remember something, that event is like vivid and you manage to express also the emotion cells. I think that's elements is important. And what I would like to say is that it has been great collaborating, and working with the participants. Most of the participant is from U3, which is University of Third Age, and I've worked with them for now for 3 years. So there's another project and James also involved with that, is the active aging with the active mind. So better aging with an active mind. So there has been a really vibrant group. And they really wanted to understand more about the latest research, and we've launched a series of workshops looking into memory, dementia, physical activity, and also the importance of touch. And also James had a practical workshop, on touch too. So it's been great. In the element is that to co-create projects with the community, so that we're asking what the communities actually want to do and also incorporate it into our research. I think this element is fantastic as a researcher.
Yeah. So we'd like to thank you very much for watching our film, and we hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I remember it as though it were yesterday. I was about 7 years old. I'd just moved house. I didn't like it. It was a dark house. I wanted to get out. And a local Sunday school group invited me to go with them. It was a bit scary because I didn't know them, but I went. We went on the bus, we went on the train, into the countryside. I'd never been before. Oh, the smells, the sights, the colours. It was so delightful. And I picked flowers. You could pick wildflowers then. And I just gathered them in my arms. I went and sat on the grass. I took off my shoes and just held these flowers and smelt them. It was such a beautiful day.
I remember it like yesterday. My elderly friend of 10 years, I would see her on a regular basis. And this very nice, hot, sunny day, I decided to pick her up, to take her to Southport for a drive or a walk, or whatever she wanted to do. We got to Southport and we walked along Lord Street, and it was just, the weather was superb. And the atmosphere was great. There was a chap playing an instrument, and he had a sound box outside a very big department store that normally has the doors closed, but they were open this day. So we go into the shop and we're walking around, and she's saying hello to everybody because she was such a happy little person, and she loved it. And all of a sudden she tugged on me and she said, can we dance? And we went up and down the aisles dancing, and all the staff were so delighted, and they all clapped, and she curtsied, and it was lovely.
remember an incident when I was maybe 5 or 6. It was a big old Victorian house, and I think it was probably a private or a prep school. And we did all sorts of extra things. I learned French at 4, which was just amazing. And I remember that when I finally got to secondary school and started doing French. And then we did lots of things to do with music. My mother was a pianist, and so it really chimed with me that I was doing something with music as well. We were listening to rhythm and melody. It was that session. And the radio began to play a tune, and it was soft and swaying. And some of the children began to get up and move about. And the teacher said, "Right, Susan, I want you to be a tree, and I want you to move like a tree in the wind." I don't want to. I really, really don't want to do this. This is showing off. And in my family, we don't do acting, and that's showing off. But she must have put out a hand and encouraged me, took me to my feet, and I became a tree. And I think from that moment, I've always loved to move to music. I can't sit still when there's a rhythm and a beat. And people have commented that they wish I would, because I'm jumping about in my seat and maybe irritating other people.
I remember, I must have been about 6 or 7 years old. And when I was younger, I had very, very bad asthma. And I wasn't allowed to do sports day or sports because they thought if I ran, it would bring on an asthma attack. But they'd let me dance. For some strange reason, dancing was fine. So each year we had a maypole. And I was desperate to dance around this maypole. And if it was well enough, they'd let me dance around the maypole. And this particular year, the sun was out shining. It seemed like the whole of the school's parents were there. And I was allowed to dance. And I always had the same partner that was the same height as me. And of course, if I couldn't dance, he couldn't dance. So he was 9 times out of 10 really not pleased that I couldn't dance. But this particular time, we danced. And as soon as the music starts, even though I didn't do it all the time, you know instinctively what to do. And to this day, I still know what to do to the dance. And I've taught my little granddaughter now, and she's 3. So the dance goes on. Oh, nice. I can't believe I sound like my mother.
When this memory came up, it was like it happened yesterday. I'd been meditating in the Maharishi Dome in Skelmersdale with a whole bunch of people. And I was walking home in the evening. It was getting a little dark at the time. And to get back to my house, I have to pass through this estate. And there's a parade of shops with corner shop, chemist, and a chippy. And the light from the chippy was shining on a wide piece of pavement. And standing there was a bunch of teenagers, about 17. And they were pretty animated. They were knocking each other about a little bit and joking and calling each other names. But there was a vibe in the air, and I thought, okay, what's going on here? And I realized 5 of them, all dressed in black, were boys. 1 was a girl, also dressed in black. So I thought, okay, there could be some reaction to me passing quite close by them, which I had to do. So as I drew near, I decided to transform myself a little. I became a cowboy sitting on a horse. And we clip-clopped our way past that little group And I turned to the guys and I said, "Evening, gentlemen." Another couple of clip-clops reached the lady, lifted my imaginary hat and said, "Evening, ma'am." And the girl's face lit up and she roared with laughter. And the boys kind of felt, yeah, it's okay, so they laughed a little bit too. And I clip-clopped my way around the corner. Imagination had held the power for just a few seconds. And as I got round, I realized I had to turn down a little alleyway, quite dark by now, between a back fence and the walls on a block of flats. And the horses behind wouldn't fit through. So I had to dismount, let the horse go, turn from being a cowboy back into being Brian, and hurry my way home just in case the bubble burst and all that little bit of happiness turned into them running after me.
So I can remember like it was yesterday being taken to the beach by my mother. So we lived in Ormskirk, and my mum was one of the few people I think that had a car, or certainly one of the few mothers that drove a car at that time. So we set off in the car and drove to Formby, and then we got out of the car obviously to walk to the beach. Well, I had no idea this walk through the pine woods was going to be so long. And as a child, so we just kept walking and walking. And at one point we did pass this hut, which my mother pointed out to me. And she said that that had belonged to my father and his friends. My father had died when I was a baby, and I can remember it was one of the few times that he was mentioned. But as a child, it wasn't something that really affected me. We carried on walking, and then we walked over the sand dunes, and eventually we reached the beach. So we had our lunch with us. We unpacked the picnic, sat on the beach, and started to eat the sandwiches. I complained that the sandwich was full of sand and I couldn't eat it. And of course, my mother told me not to be so fussy. But then the next day it turned out that I developed tonsillitis, so it was decided that the reason I'd been so grumpy and said the sandwiches were horrible was because of the tonsillitis.
I remember when I was a child, decades ago, lived in an unlovely town called Middlesbrough. I was brought up in a terraced house in a long road, and I always wanted a bike, but I never got one. I always wanted roller skates, but never got one. And my memory is, as a child, having a thirst for movement, wanting to get out there and play. But I was quite a shy child and very fearful and inhibited, and I was often stopped from going outside. But in the town, there was a big park, and we used to go there for our summer holiday, and it had I remember a big stone fountain, which used to play with lovely water. I remember the water. Nearby, there was a children's playing area that had things in it like slides and waltzes and climbing frames and a row of swings. And you had to queue up to use the swing. And I remember the big boys used to stand on the seats and really perilously standing high, use their bodies to go higher and higher and higher and higher. And then it would be my turn. And I can remember still the sense of freedom, of being carefree, of running along the ground with your feet to get the momentum for the swing to go, and then backwards with your feet, and then forwards, lifting your legs up, and then backwards again, and then you thrust forward with your arms, and then you pulled back with your body, and gradually you got higher and higher and higher, until at that pitch of the height, when you felt that you and the swing were one, almost, like weightless, you almost felt that you could bound out into some blue sky. And I remembered that motion and that desire for movement, and that it was frustrated. And I think if you don't have that opportunity, you never get it again, because you just slow down. How do you like to go up in a swing? Up in the air, so blue. Oh, I do think it's the pleasantest thing ever a child could do. Up in the air and over the wall, till I can see so high. Rivers and trees and cattle and all over the countryside. Till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. Up in the air I go flying again, up in the air and down.
Can you tell us why you chose that particular memory?
I think it's because I remember in lockdown, when I was living on my own, looking out into the garden thinking, how could I get some exercise? And I thought I'd have a swing made, and I did. And when it arrived, it had carved on the side, reach for the stars. And somebody helped me put it up onto a branch. But it didn't work really very well because the branch was too high. You couldn't get the pendulum of the swing going. And it also went round in a circle. It was a disappointment.
When we were in the group meeting deciding what we were going to do, I really had no idea and thought, I don't think I can think of anything. But then one of the other people there said that he remembered walking with his father. And that's what prompted me to think about walking with my mother.
The memory, initially it was just the first thing that came to my mind. But as I've pondered on it over the weeks, it seems to have been very significant in my life, as coming from darkness into light. And as I've gone deeper into that memory and used dance and I've actually done it at home and yeah, I've just gone deeper, and it's just seemed more and more meaningful. I can relate now to that throughout my life in many different circumstances.
I chose the particular memory because of my granddaughter and because of how happy I was with that movement. Skipping was such a wonderful thing when you were a child, and to be able to teach my granddaughter to skip was a great thing.
It's kind of tricky to know what to do with it, what to bring in, what the rhythms are, and how to portray all the actors in it, so to speak. So that I just do the best I can, I guess, and it might develop further one day. But it was interesting playing all the parts, and because I'm not a SCEM teenager, so I have to wing it a bit.
Because this little friend of mine, she was so happy. She loved life. She'd been the youngest of 10 children, and she could tell such wonderful tales. So it was nice to give something back and to make her happy.
Lovely.
It's the furthest back I could go. You asked us to think back to an incident, and I thought, well, the obvious thing is to start at the beginning. So I tried to send my memory as, say, years and years back from where we were. So nothing really in the present, my present life came to my mind. I just delved and delved until that one came out, and then I hung on to it and developed it.
And how has the experience of translating that memory into movement been for you?
Well, at first it felt very awkward and clunky because we were asked to recollect a memory of what seemed to me just a very discrete, unremembered movement. But as I got into it, I found that rediscovering the kind of memory of what it felt like to be on a swing and the up and down and the flying of that really did bring back a almost nostalgic sense of what it was like to be a child. You know, before you left the Garden of Eden, it was a bit like, if I was to think now, in a fanciful way, of what it would be like the day you were dying, to me it would be like, possibly, walking home on a late summer's afternoon with breathless air and that kind of red gold of the sun in summer, and you going home to a place where you're known and loved and welcomed and where nothing any longer is expected of you. And it would be just like getting in the swing of childhood, you know, where you were eventually so carefree and so weightless that you could just bound off into a big blue beyond. That's where I got to, actually, honestly. And the experience felt quite poignant in such a surprising way. It really did.
Well, it's quite difficult for me because I'm not artistic or creative. I'm very much a facts person. So I've had to elicit your help, your help, James, to do that.
The memory is really easy. I remember every last detail. But because I've got arthritis, the putting into practice is a bit difficult. I can do it and show maybe once or twice. After that, I'm sitting down and giving instruction.
Only was I being myself, but I had to somehow or other convey everything else that was going on, the other people there. And not being a SCEM teenager at that age of testosterone, I wasn't quite sure how that would turn out, but hey, let's just give it a whirl.
Oh, it's been very pleasant. Very, very pleasant. Because it was such a magical time.
Because there was a memory of the reluctance to move, in reluctance, a real anger about being asked to do something that I didn't want to do. But how did I get to be part of the movement, and how did I get to be a tree? Somebody must have encouraged me. So my only thought is that it had to be the teacher who was in charge. She must have held out a hand. They were all she's. She must have held out a hand to me and helped me onto the floor and then shown me what to do. And then it became just part of what we all did together. We all became that forest of trees moving in the wind.
At first, very awkward, very new, very different. And something that I think I will try to do again, because I have found it profitable.
Thank you. And cut.